Greetings, National Security Board. I came across this article. I have been listening to President Biden's interview on CNN today, which I would like to also address. But just going through this article, a decisive decade as it confronts both competition with China and Russia, attempting to upend the international order while facing challenges from climate change to energy to it's this approach that's gonna ruin everything. And it starts just right here. China, Russia, a new world order. President Biden, this is a thought experiment question for you that I hope that you really dive into, because it is a very serious question where your true answer that you end up on will ultimately judge the fate of our great nation. And I know you don't want that to end up on the end of the world scale. That goes unsaid. So the question is, President Biden, is it more important to make this country great again and again and again? Or is it more important for you to become president in 2024 so that you beat President Trump and his approach to a great America? Is it more important for you to be the man who is left with the legacy that I just don't understand, sir, what it is you envision your legacy and your family's legacy to be written down as in the history books. When I was a comedian, I always just kind of did this exercise where I would look at, HBO specials and how they described the special or the comedian. And I always just asked myself, like, how would my Wikipedia page or, my search results look? So when I ask you, how do you pray your family, the Biden name, under Joe and Jill and Hunter and Bo and all that, how do you want to go down in history? Because right now you are on a very, very slippery slope, sir, to where you're heading in the right direction, but you need to speed it up. And in that interview, I can just tell that you just haven't been trained well enough to be able to just speak in this fashion that I'm trying to present to you and the staff here at the National Security Strategy document, because just listen to
the nuclear threat as well, because that's always been a red line for him, that if Russian territory is threatened, that he would use nuclear weapons. He has.
So right here, the world is at an inflection point, and the choices we make today will set the terms on how we are set up to deal with significant challenges and the significant opportunities we face in the years ahead. Well stated by Mr. Sullivan. And then the strategy was delayed for months, in part, Mr. Sullivan suggested, because the analysts needed to factor in lessons from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, now in its 8th month. The strategy, which every administration is required to draft, informs a separate document that has yet to be released from the Pentagon called the National Defense Strategy, which in turn informs budgeting and other plans for the U.S. military. The strategy document singles out China as the most consequential challenge the U.S. faces in the global order. This is a great example of what the problem is. Why is it the most consequential challenge? Why couldn't it be worded as our strategy document identifies China as a crucial partner in global order in which the U.S. faces? It's just, why are we are pointing fingers everywhere at Russia and now China and then North Korea. They are all strategically, sir, I feel, working together to expose just how hypocritical and bigoted our country, and when I say our country, I mean specifically what our leaders, and when I say our leaders, I mean the politicians that I have personally lived under, to which I have never voted for a president. I've always entrusted that no matter what, I have full faith that my fellow neighbors will pick whoever they feel is the proper president to lead this great country that I get to live in, that I was born in, that my parents worked so hard to make sure that happened that way. Not end up at this moment. And we're at this moment, sir, because all the politicians who essentially ignited were the catalysts to these problems that we are now dealing with on so many scales, as far as just the political battle between parties where they're butting heads when they both should be facing the same direction. And I say to Andrew Yang, the idea of a forward party is absolutely ridiculous. All that will do is expose the politicians who come to this forward party to the point where the American people can look at them and say, so if you were this type of politician the whole time, why didn't you, while a member of the Republican or Democratic Party that you were affiliated with before this forward party formed, didn't you stand up to the corruption and all the pain those politicians who didn't join the forward party, who still remain true to their particular fraternity? Sir, our founding fathers said it. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another and assume amongst the separate but equal station to one people, not just one people in America, one people, the Pledge of Allegiance, liberty and justice for all. So we're at a point, you are correct, an inflection point to where it's going to be the hardest for politicians and all the figures that we, and when I say we, I mean my generation, the millennials, the Generation X's, and even these Zoomers and the Generation Alphas who are going to hopefully not know anything of this trouble. It'll be like a tale of Santa Claus, but the alphas are seeing just how our continuing system of government, elections, and our politicians' goals for our country. It's clear that the politicians, I'm not going to say all of them, but a very, very good majority give us, the American people who elect these people in, and when I say people, I mean your fellow colleagues in the House up in Washington, D.C. Again, listen to what I'm saying. When I use these pronouns as they and people, I stop to make sure I make it clear and evident that when I say people, I'm talking about politicians or I'm talking about the citizens. And this is where I try to tell my parishioners about this whole woke agenda, is that with pronouns, you got to understand that if I came up to you, me, sir, to you, President Biden, and said, I am Charles, I go by he, him, and they, and those Asians, blah, blah, blah. Just not that drastic, but just they. And then I'm sitting here, we're talking, and then you get into a diatribe about how those Russians and they do this and they. And now you got to understand where now this new generation who's coming up and they're using these pronouns for this new young upcoming generation, the Zoomers, the very young Zoomers who are being questioned by this and then being used as cannon fodder by their parents who are now being labeled as domestic threats, terrorists to our nation's stability, essentially. To which I explained, yes, any parent who doesn't have the rationality to be able to sit down with their young elementary school child and say, what did you learn in school today? Oh, they asked you if you wanted to be a different gender. You know, parents are so weary about using the word sex or whatever. It's just kids are so much more adaptable, and the reference was a sponge, but they are more like quantum computers, sir. My generation and older, which you fall in, are a classical computer world where now these classical computers have to get upgraded in the language they speak. If they only speak binary, ones and zeros, which it seems Republicans are, I guess, would be the ones that are more prone to just be able to only speak in binary. They don't acknowledge the three, the possibility that somebody can communicate with a three in this 1, 2. Okay? Democrats, however, have used this to their political strategy to plan how they will either gain control or win control or stay in control of power of our government over those far extreme Republicans who are still Americans. And so this is a great example of when you talk about how the people of Russia and China and all this are living under this regime and blah, 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 blah. You have to understand that there are Chinese American immigrants, Russian American immigrants. We are seeing North American defectors who are speaking out. You got to understand, even as a native-born American whose parents are direct immigrants from South Korea, when I hear Fox, the Five, talk about Xing and just how communist China is the worst evil you can think of, making kids work in sweatshop factories to make what? T-shirts? Yes. T-shirts for who? Americans. It's just we forgot that we are the reason slavery exists, essentially. If we didn't need these cheap goods, we wouldn't have to, things would change. But because we just say that's evil, but hey, I still like this t-shirt, it exists. This is the deception. This is the breakdown between each individual's ego, superego, and id battling with each other. This isn't a battle between nations. This is Armageddon. What is the good and evil inside each of us? At a certain point, everyone must understand and acknowledge, any rational human being, like you said, yes, understands that any use of a nuclear weapon is only gonna lead to the worst possible outcome. That's paraphrasing. Now, this is where I just have to switch over and show you just the hypocrisy of just this little 15-minute interview that you did with Tapper on CNN today. So again, sir, what you're about to see is just complete candor. I do this because, again, I love our nation. I just want the best outcome for your family and your son, which you address here, to which I don't know if you were taking the advice, but this is not the way to do it, sir. And I invite Hunter to listen to this and express this, because I've been in this position where I've been the black sheep drug addict who's tried to prove to the world and their family members who they've harmed during their backslide that I am not this person anymore. So I think it is reassuring for Hunter to hear you say he went through this, and I have full support and trust that he's over this. But now I just hope that you can kind of see that now, I don't know, Hunter, you gotta kind of come clean and be like, Dad, I'm still kind of screwing up. And this is where I have to just kind of point my discernment is your real hatred for Putin the fact that this whole thing with Hunter has something to do with Russia and all that? So that's just another rhetorical question, just to where I'm just try to weed out the most wicked of intentions on why you would portray your message to our nation and to Putin in this way. And you begin with a challenge where you say you don't think anybody is capable or ready to sit down at a table and try to negotiate anything with Putin about any of this. Sir, I have come to accept that challenge. And I guess this next segment is going to be my qualification, just to let you know that I'm not just some nobody who's just whatever. Just let's get on with it.